Hello. Tuesday, February 16, I believe it is. Last night I got the back door bolt lock finally installed, and it came out great. How about that? I sealed it all the way around with Gorilla construction adhesive, which is not a caulk, but hey, I love this stuff, so I use it all I can. Solid, baby. So now I'm gonna work on installing the back door seal. I hate that I nicked the paint there. And I also hate that I didn't put enough paint in that one little spot right there. So I might hold off on installing the seal. I might install the seal. Anyway, here's the door seal. I made it last night. Or, yeah, I guess you could say I made it. This stuff came in a roll. Okay, and I don't know if it's ideal or not, but it's what I'm going to use. I tried to bend it in a 90-degree turn here, and it won't bend without kinking. So I did some tests with some little cut-off pieces, and I used weldwood contact cement. And it's quite strong. I mean, I'm not going to test it and try to rip it apart, but hey, it's working. So this is peel and stick stuff, and it's going to go in this space. I wonder if I should put a bead of caulk in that little gap there before I install it. Got to think about that. All right. So the bus didn't come with this factory. I added this piece of angle on here, and I had it lined up. It's flush with the bottom piece and the top all the way around. So yeah, here we go. All right. So it hasn't been a great day, but it hasn't been a bad day. So I got the door seal installed, and what's panned out is what I was concerned about, and I think we're going to be okay, is the space between the door and where the seal mounts determines how much crush there is on the seal. And I gave it my best shot, and right now I've got a piece of 1/8 inch aluminum and this piece of a license tag, which is probably like a 32nd inch, and it seems to be giving me the right amount of crush just about. The door latch just barely goes in the hole, which means it needs to come in a little bit more. Actually, I'm noticing right now the force on the bolt is putting a bow in this thing right here. So I'm not sure if I'm going to reinforce this, or I'm not sure what's going to happen, but now let me show you what I did. All this stuff's going to fall when I unlatch the door here. Alright, so I'm going to jump down. Yeah. So I kind of goofed a little bit on the length of this piece, because I wanted to stretch it when I installed it, so that I would, know that I had it nice and straight, and it'd be snug, but came out a little bit too tight. And I guess you can see right there it's pulling a little bit, but I think it might settle down. I mean, it's not an issue unless it starts to pull up or something. And I extra stretched it in the middle so it wouldn't be pulling on the ends so much. So I mean, it actually seems like it's okay. And the top looks fine. Now at first, when I first latched it, I was getting disappointed because when I went on the inside of the bus, I could see light coming in past the seal, and then I remembered I designed this to have a little extra piece I'm going to put on here so that the striker will pull the door in a little bit harder. But let me take a look at this without the pressure on it. I don't know, it looks like it might have a little bow in it naturally. But so here's the lock I showed a minute ago. There's no adjustment on its location. So, there's just a tiny bit of wiggle room there. But I think if I leave this door shut for a while, in a few days or a week or so, that seal might crush some and she's going to be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put that metal back in. I don't think this thing could be bowing. I mean, that's a pretty thick piece of plastic and a healthy piece of steel right there, but maybe it is. But we're going to go ahead and button this thing up and call that done. Done enough anyway for now. If it doesn't pan out, then I'm not sure what I would do here, because I can't. I've welded this pocket in so there's no room to make adjustments. That was probably an oversight doing it this way. So that means it has to be just right. And there's no wiggle room here because those screws, they're countersunk screws, right? So that's all there is. But, without, you could see that it's sticking out a little bit. I mean, the door's not straight. If you've seen my other video discussing how I've aligned this door, see it's sticking out at the bottom a little bit, sticking out at the top a little bit, but in the middle it's pretty much almost not sticking out at all. It's about a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch it needs to go in, and that's the crush in the gasket that I got to do. And it's not that the door's flexing. This door is solid, man. I considered trying to bend it back before paint, and this thing was not going to yield. So anyway, that's that. Rambling on a little bit. The paint that was back here rusting, or lack of paint, I sanded it down right on this edge here. I sanded it down and used a paintbrush and touched it up, and whatever, it's good enough for me. So while I was waiting for that paint to dry, I thought to myself, well, let me install the windows, or begin to install the windows. And I went and got the first one. The front window is about 1 inch smaller than these three on both sides. I grabbed the first one, and what I had done is I bought these windows like a year ago, and just like a month ago I took them over to Tint King, and I had them tint all the windows for me. And it's one of those deals, man. I mean, I brought them all there. He quoted me $200. When I went to go pick them up, the guy says that'll be like $298 plus tax, something like that. And it was like $298 something, whatever. And I said, well, what happened to $200? And the guy said, well, I made a mistake when I quoted you. And I just looked at him and didn't say anything for about 5 seconds. And he goes, I'll give it to you for the $200 like I quoted you. I said, okay, thanks. So, I mean, he made it good and everything was fine with that, for me anyway. And so now go to install the windows, and the tint is peeling off at the very edges of it. Almost every window, pretty much every window is peeling, just a tiny bit on the edge. The two smallest ones were the worst. It's got like some areas where like a quarter of an inch of the edge had peeled up. So I'm gonna just bring it back and tell the guy, look man, stuff's peeling off. See how that goes. So that's all I'm gonna get done tonight. I'm gonna pick up, take a shower. I got a little bit of garbage on the floor. This is the backing of the weather stripping. Got that stuff at mcmastercar.com if y'all are interested where I got it from. All right, y'all have a good night. Good morning, Sunday, July 20th. There's a whole bunch of thunder going on. Just stopped about 2 seconds before I started the video. Guess we got a storm coming in. Wow, look at all the new growth on that mango. Guess it's down there. Yeah. Ain't gonna be out here much. There's a really big storm down there coming this way. That's from the southwest. They don't usually come this way from the southwest. Alright. Pineapples are doing good. Alright, on the bus. Last night I made the shim plate for the rear door. Man, that thunder is something. So let me tell you what I did here with the rear door latch. So with this thin piece of aluminum here, it gives me the right pull in on the door to compress the gaskets, and they're compressing quite a lot, which I like. I know I got a good positive seal all the way around the door. I mean, it's at least 1/8 of an inch of squeeze on this bubble, which was what I calculated. It's 1/2 inch. This is 1/2 inch bulb seal, and it's compressed down to about 3/8 of an inch all the way around. A little bit less in some places, a little bit more in some others, but so it's pretty firm. It takes a little bit of effort to push the door shut. Hoping that, where'd you go? That this little ramp right here and the tiny bit of ramp I put on the front edge of this aluminum piece work together to make this, the latching of the door, do the pulling in, and I don't have to push on the door too hard. But it's not going to get that much use, and the door seal is going to get formed over time anyway. But I couldn't ask for a better fit. Actually, it's pretty perfect, and the lock pin is fitting perfectly in the hole that I put in there. So everything has worked out just perfectly great. But now I'm at the point where I got to mount this. I got it just wedged in there. And the squeeze on this pin or bar is holding that in there. So I want to put a screw on each side of this, at least one screw. And the problem is that I already put the door seal in place, so I don't want to drill any holes, because I'll drill a hole through the bulb seal. But there is a space between the bulb seal, because the bulb seal only comes out about this far. So there's room on this side, on the other side of this piece of angle, for a nut. So today, I'm thinking that that's going to be my task to do. So let me open this up, and that piece of metal is going to fall. So you see, it's not that tight, really. Let me just, maybe I can hold it with my finger. I don't want to listen to that clang. Okay. Here we go. Kind of scratched up the paint, dang it. So what I did, this started out being 1/4 of an inch thick, and I'm fortunate enough that I've got a milling machine, so I clamped this in this milling machine, and I faced off the first side, then I faced off the second side to get the thickness that I wanted, and then I trimmed it all the way around, and it's about 3.5 inches long, which, you know, hey, I'm just guessing at this stuff as I go along. Now, oops, okay, gotta take the bolt lock out. There we go. So, swing the door around. My little stopper that I made down there. So in this gap, I've got that little space down there. Where the heck are you? There you are. So that's what I was thinking. I could put a couple of screws in that. Not that much room, is it? The bulb seal flattened out a little bit, so yeah, it sure is getting a good squeeze on the bulb seal. That's going to be perfectly, that ain't just watertight, that's airtight, man. Alright, so maybe what I'll do, maybe I'll put threads in that metal, drill it and thread it. And then I can, gosh, I sure wish, where'd you go again? I sure wish I would have thought of installing this plate before I put the bulb seal, because then I could have drilled and threaded this metal and made the screws the right length to just be flush on the bulb seal side, and then the seal could seal the screws. Let me think about, oops, we're upside down, aren't we? Sorry about that. Let me think about what we're going to do here. Okay, so I decided what I want to do. I want to use stainless steel screws. I would like to use number 10 stainless steel screw like this, excepting this is 24 threads per inch. I want to use a 32 threads per inch screw like this. It's finer. Since we're going through only an 1/8 inch piece of steel, true, the coarser threads are bigger, but the finer threads will give me more threads. So I think I'm going to go with the finer thread screw, except I don't have any flathead countersunk screws that are 1032 thread. So I'm kind of stuck at the moment. Actually, I do. I've got these 4. These are the last 4 of these Allen head center screws, and I ground the tip of the head off, the edges of the head off, for some kind of special thing I was doing. So I think I'm going to do, I mean, I've got number 6 screws. That's a little bit too small. And I have number 8 screws. I could actually use these and cut them off, but 8s are a little bit small. Unless I put 5 of them in there instead of 4. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 1032s. I'll drill the aluminum plate with the hole I need, and I'll drill the bus and thread the bus and get everything done, lining up everything using these round head 1032s, and then after I'm all done, I won't cut these screws to fit the length I need. I'll go to the hardware store and I'll buy some 1032 stainless steel flatheads. Then I'll countersink this metal so the screw heads will sit flat. So yeah, okay. So here's what I did. You see this scratch mark I put here? I went to the bus and I measured where I want the screws to line up on this plate, side to side. I measured from the end to here on the 1 1/4 angle steel that's out there, and then I put this scratch, and then I set the screw here to eyeball how it looks, and I was happy with that. So then I measured from the scratch to this end, and I put a scratch there and I put a scratch there, so then the screw will be equal in that corner, just for aesthetics purposes. Right? So now I got these two marks, and those are like my home base kind of a deal. So then I wanted to divide out so I can equally have the screws equally divided. So I measured this incorrectly the first time, which that's what that is. I missed by 1.1. And then, since this is going to be in 1, 2, 3 divisions, even though it's 4 screws, there's 3 divisions, I took the measurement of 3.390 from these 2 scratches and divided it by 3, and I get 1.130. So then I set my dial caliper to 1.130, and I put the point on the left point on that scratch, and I made the taller of those 2 scratches there. That short one is the one I did incorrectly. And then I did the same thing on this side, and I made the taller of those 2 scratches. And then as a sanity check, I take my caliper and I put it here. This is how I caught my mistake on the first one. So the taller of those 2 scratches is where I want the holes to go. So now I've got options. What I can do here, the most basic thing to do now would be to center punch on those marks and drill those holes. The other way to do this would be to put this in my milling machine and only have one of them center punched, and center up my machine on it, and then I could drill that hole and move over 1.130 and drill that hole and move over 1.130 and that one, and so on. And then I don't have to do any more locating, and it's going to be within, as accurate as I'm measuring with these old worn out points, close enough for what we're doing. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to center pinch one of these, and we're going to drill this metal out to the hole size required for threading a 1032 screw. So this screw is not going to fit through this plate. With me? So then we're going to take this thing over to the bus and we're going to clamp it in place, and then we're going to drill through this plate into the steel angle on those 4 holes with the size drill bit for threading. Then we're going to remove this from the bus. Just take the clamp off and take that off. And then we're going to thread the 4 holes in the bus, and then we're going to come back and drill this metal out to the size that this will slip through, and then we'll be golden. All right, from that part on, it's all going to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right, I kind of double checked some things, and I realized that I could peel the bulb seal off the bus pretty easily. I'm hoping it doesn't bite me in the butt later, but anyway, so if I could do that, then that means I can put the screws down the center here, and then what happens is that the holes underneath the bulb seal will get sealed up with the bulb seal, and I don't have to worry about looking at the end of those screws. So the correct drill for a 1032 thread using my drill chart is a number 21 drill bit. I might actually go to a 20 if I'm having any difficulty, which is a tad bigger. So I've drilled all the holes that I want, leaving, let's see, this is the finished side, this is the back side where I'm scratching. So trying to get the scratches to show up for you. There you go. That's the center. That and that are a 1-inch wide area where the bolt slides out. I didn't want the screws that be interfering with that. And then I just visually spaced out these screws where I'd like them to be, leaving enough room for the size of the countersunk head. See there? So now I'll deburr these just so I don't have to deal with the little burrs coming out. I'm going to go clamp this onto the bus. Let me show you what I'm doing here. Probably should just go bring the clamps and all that stuff and start over, but can't help myself. I want to go double check one more time what I'm doing. Slow and steady wins the race, right? Alright, so here's where I was pulling this off. It does come off. Unfortunately, the adhesive is staying on the bus, so I may end up putting a little bit of contact cement on this after I'm done doing the install, but this means I can pull this back enough, right, and it's stretchy, so we'll be able to drill this piece of metal and then thread it such that this piece will sit right there with 4 screws in it. Okay, we're clamped in place, and you can see the 2 little dots that I put right there to line myself up vertically on there. I use my Sharpie pen, and I'm just going by feel with my fingers here to ensure that I've got this thing straight and in the place where I want it. And I'm going to come back with my drill and drill these 4 holes, and I'll just hold this stuff out of the way when the drilling's being done. Okay, so I just got done drilling, and so now you can see I've got these 4 holes are perfectly aligned through and through. Now, threading. Okay, here's the setup I'm using for tapping. These are called tap sockets. I got these off the Mack truck, oopsie, many years ago. It's a 1/4-inch drive on the small ones, and it's a 3/8 drive on the larger ones. Okay, I don't know what brand they are, but the tap is held in there. There's a little O-ring up in the hole, and then way up in there it's square. So I'm going to use the screwdriver handle. Hold on, I'm trying to do this with one hand. There we go. I'm going to use the screwdriver handle to get me started, and if I need a little bit of extra force, which 1032 is not going to take that much, but that'll get me through. I'm not going to use any cutting fluid because I don't want to get anything on the adhesive from the bulb seal back there that might mess with that, because it's still going to stick back. So I'm just going to thread these guys in there. I'm going to use one hand to do the threading and one hand to hold the bulb seal out of the way, and that should go very easily. The next step is drilling out the aluminum plate with larger screws, enough for the screws to fit through. And then I'm going to go get the screws, and then we'll do the countersinking, and this piece will be done. Alright, so we're back. I threaded the holes, and that was uneventful. Actually, that tap was brand new and sharp, so it went through so easily by hand. I decided to do the other 3 by just putting the tap in the drill, ran it in and out. And so I guess I could have taken more care. So I've got little fragments of metal stuck to the adhesive on the back of the bulb seal. So I'm picking all that out of there because I don't want to have just these little raw fragments of steel. They'll likely rust, and who knows what kind of nastiness that'll make. So I'm going to clean that up by physically pulling the pieces out of there, and if I have to, I'll get a little bit of solvent, lacquer thinner or something on a towel and wipe it. And then we'll come back and knock the little burrs off the holes. I guess I should do that now because more crud's going to fall. And then we're ready to get our screws. Okay, we're all done with the fabrication part. Went to the hardware store, and they didn't have the exact right screws, so rather than getting, and they didn't have any individuals in 1032s. The frickin' Ace Hardware, or True Value Hardware in my community, just replaced its whole hardware section, and I think they really screwed up, man. Now the selection is just crap. Anyway, I was able to buy a whole box instead of buy individuals screws. And so I bought like 1.25 inch long screws since I was gonna have to cut them anyway. That would give me something to work with to put it in a vise. So I measured what I needed, and I cut them, and so the screws will. I cut them, and then I ground down the tip flat on the grinder, and then put a little bit of bevel on it. And if you put a screwdriver in the head, you can grind at the tip of a really small screw like this. So I measured, and the screws are sticking out 1/8 of an inch. So with some luck, you know, this ought to just go right in there. Oh, and yeah, I wiped out the all the metal shapings with a paper towel, having a little bit of lacquer thinner on it, and it softened up the glue, the stickiness on that adhesive that was on those screws. So this is going to be a little tough to get started because I purposely left the screws very flat on their tip so that I would get plenty of, you know, every bit of that last thread poking through the hole. I'm going to try to do this with one hand here. There we are. Here's one. Okay. Let me leave that just a little loose. Let me check here. Yeah, man. Nicely done. So we're going to put the rest of these screws in there. I know I'm all over the place with the camera, but this is tough. One-handed, right? Got two. Four. There we go. One, two, three, four. Now let's see how this thing performs. Bevel guy, it's going to suck the door in. Perfect. You got to push it in by hand a little bit, but that's all right. There you go. I love it. Let's try that from the inside. Nice and tight. All right. See how that latch, the bevel on it, does what it needs to do? That's just perfect. It's exactly how I wanted it to work. Yeah. I'll put a little dab of lube on there, some kind of grease. There you go. Got my back door latch, and I can lock it too.